Quick personal update. It's a big week for me because I am starting a brand new job this week. Yes, in addition to my business, I still have a full-time job. And if you ever want to talk about why I choose to do that, let me know that in the comments because I would love to have a conversation about that. But here's the reality. Changes in routine can be super overwhelming, but that doesn't mean they have to derail your progress. So today I want to show you how I've been preparing for this new busy season in my life and the one habit that's been keeping me grounded no matter how busy I get. But before we dive into this, make sure you like this video, subscribe to the channel if you haven't already, and ring that little notification bell so that you never miss a tutorial or upload. Okay, so I am very excited to get started in this new job, but the reality is that my previous job, at least towards the end, was very slow paced. It gave me a lot of room, a lot of latitude to work on my business, to film content, to do all of that. And this new job, well, it's not going to be like that. And I'm excited for that, to be honest, because I enjoy a fast paced, kind of quick moving environment. But what that means is that the slower paced routine that I had gotten into, that I had settled into, I needed to be able to make a shift. I needed to be able to jump back into that super fast-paced environment without hopefully losing a step. So that's where a little bit of my nerves come into play because I have spent so much time and energy, you guys know, trying to work on consistency in my business, specifically with my content, with the podcast, with my tutorials on the YouTube channel, with emails, with all of that. And, this has the potential of derailing all of that if I'm not prepared. So because I knew in advance that this shift was coming, I had a little bit of a buffer window between when I knew that I was going to be moving over to this new job and when my reality was going to get rocked. I thought, okay, this is the time. I've learned this as much in the corporate world as anywhere, that you prepare for the busy seasons before the busy season, right? If you wait until it's already starting to get crazy, well, it's too late at that point because you're already in the thick of it and now you're just trying to keep up. So fortunately, I had that ability to prepare in advance, but I want to show you what I've been doing to prepare in advance because you're going to have your own shifts in your life, in your business, whether you have a day job in addition to your business or just your family, and that's going to shift and change with the seasons, especially if you have kids as they get older. They're going to need you in different ways and all of that. So let me show you how I'm preparing so that you will be able to apply this in your own life. And I'm hoping that you see this as an opportunity to plan for the future now. So you don't know maybe when the next busy season is coming or what it's going to look like. But that doesn't mean that you can't put things into place so that you're prepared to adapt and change with the changing tides, right? So I can't go any further without, of course, shouting out James Clear and Tommy Baker and many others who I have learned so much about routine and habits. Honestly, without them, I feel like I wouldn't have even known where to start. I would have known I needed to prepare, but I would have just been like, okay, now what? Right? So having that background and having worked through what my process looks like for habit building and routines and all of that, and honestly, having an actual routine even in that slow season so that I could simply adjust it and modify it versus going from no routine to really structured routine. All of those things combined, I know are going to make a huge difference as I go into this busy season. And I'm going to just step back for a second because I'm obviously filming this before I start that job, which you'll understand why in a minute. But the reality is that I don't know how smooth a transition this is going to be. So I'm going to be talking about all of this like, hey, it's going to be so smooth and everything's going to be great. And I know that it's going to set me up as well as I possibly can be set up, but there are still going to be curveballs that come my way. I know this. I know I'm going to be exhausted the first couple of weeks trying to manage multiple things. But the reality is that what all of this planning does for me more than really anything else is prepares me for the unexpected, right? And so regardless of whether I come back in here in a future episode and say like, that was a whirlwind and, this went great and this didn't. And if you're curious about how all of that goes, let me know in the comments if you want me to do like a a video in a couple of weeks telling you like, hey, how did this transition actually go with all of this preparation? Because that might be really interesting, right? So let me know and I will do a video on that. But I just want to call out that, this may not go perfectly. I'm well aware of that. I don't expect it to be a perfect transition. But let's talk about the 3 ways that I have specifically been kind of shifting my strategy and preparing in advance to give myself the breathing room that I know I'm going to need. So, the first thing that I did is something that is not typically in my strategy, and that is that I batched content creation. Now, I've talked about this in the past. There are certain things that I will batch create in advance, but typically when it comes to this kind of content, my videos, my podcast and all of that, I like to do them as close to their release date as possible because they feel more authentic, they're more fresh as to what I'm actually going through in that moment. And so personally, while I will sometimes let myself get a week or 2 in advance, I don't typically batch create the way that I have been for this transition. And the main reason is because I know that, especially with the shift over to doing podcast seasons instead of just, a video every single week like I did when I first started the podcast, I think it's important for me to have more of a plan and be a little bit more strategic to stay consistent with that, especially when it comes to the fact that I want this content, I want these videos, I want these episodes to be just as quality as they have been when I've been in a slower season. But I know that realistically, I'm not going to have that kind of bandwidth, at least until I settle in to my new routine. So knowing that, I took advantage of that extra time that I had so that I could get a bunch of these done in advance. If I need to, I can always pop in and throw a short in here or do a social media post to say like, hey, here's something that's, a little more timely in this moment. But, this is kind of timeless material that I'm talking about here. Like, this may be time sensitive for me because I'm preparing for a specific transition, but this idea of preparing for busy seasons in advance, that's classic. That's not time bound at all. So I knew that I could have this conversation while I was in the thick of doing it and let you guys see it maybe a few weeks later. So when it comes to my content, I've been batch creating in advance so that I am guaranteed to keep my consistency over the next couple of weeks. This gives me so much more breathing room as I fully expect to be in probably back-to-back meetings, at least for the first week or 2 of this new job. So I'm doing orientation, getting to know people, and diving into what's going on at that company. But most importantly, this gives me the space to continue rest, to allow myself not to be up super late editing every night or getting up super early so that I can film an episode or a tutorial before I start my workday, because that would have been my reality if I had not planned this in advance. Now, is that the worst thing in the world? I mean, probably not, but at the same time, if I'm already tired from a new job, I don't need to be adding lack of sleep to this same equation, right? That's only going to make everything worse, which means I'm going to not be as focused at my job. I'm going to be not as focused in my business, and everything suffers. Another change that I have been making is I have been kind of shifting the business model for one aspect of my business. So you guys already know I have the Tech Savvy Academy. That is a subscription service where solopreneurs, typically women, are a part of this community. There are all sorts of on-demand training and classes that you can take. There are live get-togethers and things like that. But on the other side of things, I have been growing my Trello consulting business. And up until now, that has been more of a one-on-one or sometimes me with a small team kind of sessions. And that was fine during my slower time in the corporate world. But how on earth would I keep up that pace when I'm busy during their work hours, which is when they typically want to meet? It's not possible. So what I've been doing is taking inspiration from the Tech Savvy Academy business model and finding ways to turn that into more of a, I don't want to call it a subscription. It's kind of more of a group program based approach to my Trello consulting. There's a couple of levels of it so that there are still some people who will get some of that one-on-one attention from me, but I mean, it has to come at a premium at that point because now I really have to find time to set aside in the middle of a really, really busy workday in order to meet with them. So I'm, going to be doing some trial and error with some of this, but I'm finding ways that I can still provide the support that my clients need, but without the need for either one of us to find that one-on-one FaceTime on a regular basis. Now, this is still pretty new, and so I'm not sure exactly how successful this business model shift is going to be, but I also know that it was the only approach that allowed me to continue doing it while starting this new job. And so it seemed like the best logical solution. And then the third thing that I've been already working on is routine reset. Back in the day when I worked in an actual office and I lived in California, I spent a ton of time in traffic commuting, just like everyone else, right? And so I had to get up so early to have any semblance of a morning routine or work on any types of business stuff in the morning before I went into the office. And I'm not going to lie, when I moved to Idaho and things slowed down, and honestly, my commute turned from an hour sitting in traffic to from my bedroom into my office, I got a little bit lax on that. I started letting myself sleep in a little bit later. And I'm not even saying that like it's a bad thing because that was great in that season. But the reality is that I'm probably going to need more morning time to get some things done for my business before starting my workday and being able to focus on my workday when I'm supposed to be at work. The only way that I can do that without losing the space that I need for my existing morning routine is to get up earlier. So, as silly as it sounds, one of the most impactful things I've been doing is going back to shifting my alarm a little bit earlier. I'm not going to lie, I'm definitely a snoozer. I'm sorry, Mel. I know 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, get out of bed. I'm working on it. But for me, I have a couple of different snoozes that go throughout the morning to kind of allow my brain to start waking up in the slow way that it tends to do. And so I've been shifting those earlier and earlier and earlier so that ultimately I will give myself an extra hour in the morning. That still allows me to do all of the morning stuff that I do, my movement, my devotional, my time playing with Puff and drinking my coffee and all of that good stuff, but also have a good hour or so every morning to work on things for the business. Because while I'm batch creating now, obviously that's not going to carry me through forever. So I'm still going to have to be working on stuff and creating content and writing emails and doing that sort of thing. So, and maybe even shoving in a client call in the morning before I start my day. Since a lot of my clients are in later time zones than me, that actually kind of works out. But what this does is allows me to avoid getting too burned out because I'm giving myself that hour so that I don't feel like I have to work after work as much and stay up super late, which is what I would probably do if I didn't set aside that more focused time in the morning. Because I don't know about you, but I'm a little bit more focused in the morning usually. And especially after a long day at work, my brain's going to be a little fried, at least for a while. I know that realistically, I'm not going to get a whole lot of productive time after the workday. Now, in the intro, I mentioned a specific habit that I am sticking to because I know that it's going to help me stay focused and it's really going to help me stay on top of everything. And that is the way that I approach my Trello notifications. You guys know that Trello is my source of truth. It is like my second brain, my personal assistant. And I absolutely use Trello notifications. I use them sparingly so that I am only setting reminders for the things that I actually need to set reminders for. But here's the key with how I handle my notifications to make sure that they stay impactful and effective. Now, obviously, I'm doing this for Trello, but this can apply across the board to any reminders or notifications that you're using to help you stay on top of things. So here's the key with it, guys. When that notification pops up, you either need to act on it in the moment, let it sit there until it annoys you enough that you set aside time to act on it, or if the reality is just that, you know what, I'm not going to get to that today, you have to go into the notification and manually reset it for the next day. It can be a little challenging if you're at all like me to kind of admit defeat in that way and to manually go in and reset it for the next day versus marking it complete when it's not complete. Because the thing is, you could do that, and if you have it set up as a recurring reminder, then great, it'll still pop up for you tomorrow. But then it's giving you a false sense of completion, a false sense of progress if you do go back and look at your habit tracking. So I always make sure to be realistic about it, to say, look, it's just not going to happen today. Manually reset it. And I do that for a couple of reasons. Number one, because I want to make sure that it's going to pop up for me the next day so that I have another chance. But also because I need to be able to look back a couple weeks from now and see, is there a specific habit that was the one that kept getting pushed, the one that I kept not getting to? And then I can reevaluate. Am I just trying to do it at the wrong time? Or is it just more that I'm actually capable of having in my routine on a daily basis right now? And then I can shift things around and adjust my system, adjust my process accordingly. It's really important that we stay honest with ourselves in that way and honest with our habit tracking so that we can go back and adjust and keep ourselves from having to have that feeling of letting ourselves down on a daily basis. The reason that this works, it comes back to my favorite quote from James Clear. This is something that I have brought up before. I have used it as themes for videos and tutorials, and I probably always will cycle back to this because it is so, so true and has been so impactful for me. And this is from Atomic Habits. And it's where James says that you do not rise to the level of your goals, you fall to the level of your systems. So if you don't have systems at all, then you're just free falling, right? I feel like this is going to be even more impactful for me now in this busy season than it even has been for the last couple of years since I first read that book and had my complete perspective changed. So if you know that you're walking into a busy season, or even if you don't, there will be one in the future. Don't focus on just trying to pile it on and add more and more to your list. Focus on designing systems and processes in your life and in your business that support who you want to become. So now I want to hear from you. So maybe you have a busy season coming up just like I do, or you're just feeling inspired and you want to be prepared for the eventuality of that busy season. Let me know in the comments how you're going to get started to prepare for that next busy season. And if you're curious at all about joining the Tech Savvy Academy or becoming a part of this new Trello family that I'm building, I'm going to drop some links in the description so that you can go and check out both options and see if one of them is right for you. I hope you liked that video, and more importantly, that you found it helpful. If you did, please consider subscribing to the channel and sharing it with a fellow solopreneur. And make sure you check out the description for links to how we can connect and maybe even work together.